Hi, my name is Carl Lorenz Cervantes. I'm a registered psychologist, researcher, and university lecturer. My work focuses on Filipino folk psychology, what Zeus Salazar called kinagisnang psikolohiya, which are lay theories, common sense psychology, things that we understand intuitively. And this is expressed through language. What are the words that we have in our culture that actually show an access into our collective cultural consciousness? The folklore and mythology that we have, how does this reflect our understanding of cosmic processes? How does this reflect our relationship with gods and heroes and so on? And animist worldviews are also very important to look into. So I focus on the experience of the Filipino today. A lot of people think that, a lot of people ask me questions about pre colonial society. That is not the focus of my work, but I do rely on the best assumptions of historians and archaeologists within the field of the Philippine social sciences to, uh, to tell me the context of our experience today. I look into all these contexts to kind of understand, to try and understand the common sense psychology we have because we can't be removed from this context. And you'll see later on what I mean about this. But let's just look into animism first. Let's start there because if we look into the way of life that our ancestors used to live, it is what we call animist. And animism is a belief that the world is filled with spirits. Nature is filled with spirits. That's why even today we still have this remnant of animism when we cross through forests or grassy areas. Iba na sinasabi natin, tabi-tabi po, bari-bariya po, and we ask for permission before crossing these spaces which are also lived in by spirits. And you notice that we say we're careful not to kick or touch or disturb these dirt mounds, and we say that's where the nuno sa punso lives, right? Nuno, if you see, comes from ninuno, ancestor. So we believe that ancestor spirits or the spirits of people who pass away go into nature. So there is that belief that we come from nature, we return to nature, and the nature spirits that we have around us are actually ancestors who we just forgot the names of. Diba? Ang ganda. So, how is it possible now that there are a lot of cities, a lot of urban spaces? Is it still possible to be an animist in an urban space? The answer is yes. A lot of these spaces that we have still contain echoes of memory, the horrors of history, which is why I know that there are a lot of spaces that when you go there, the people who take care of that space will tell you, paghating gabi, maririnig mo yung mga iyak ng whatever, or maririnig mo yung pagmarcha ng mga sundalo and the soldiers from these old wars, di ba? So the horrors of history still exist in those spaces. The echoes of memory still are still heard in lonely rooms, and old trees still burst from the concrete. We try not to build around, we try not to build on it. Hindi natin pinuputol agad-agad kasi baka may nakatirang kapre, di ba? We have that belief. We have to do rituals first before we cut down trees. There are some documented cases that I read where a family would get sick because of some invisible being in a tree within their land of residence. So they would invite a priest to bless the tree so that the spirit would leave. So it's interesting, right? We still have these beliefs. I was taught at a young age never to point at these ancient trees. Otherwise, I have to bite my finger. So it's interesting. And how does this relate to our cultural values? We do have this very important cultural value, which is kapwa. And kapwa is present in our language. In the 1960s, when the local scholars, the social scientists, started to realize that, wait, this American psychology isn't actually, I don't resonate with it. So we started looking into our own language. And we started finding these concepts that are actually more related to us. Kapwa, loob, bahala na, hiya. And all these concepts shape what we now call psikolohiyang Filipino. Kapwa is within Psikologiyang Filipino, according to Virgilio Enriquez, is supposedly the core concept that every other cultural value or social interaction is shaped around our experience of pakikiramdam, our experience of pakikiisa. All of this is part of kapwa, and it is necessary to have that understanding. What is kapwa? It is a sense of shared identity. In English, if you translate it into English, it's usually translated as other people, which separates me from you, di ba? Merong separation of ako versus ikaw, kami versus kayo, me, you, and so there's those distinctions. But kapwa is that shared sense of identity, that belongingness, what I like to call usness, that sense of being us, that sense of being together. But that's the limit of the English language kasi, di ba? It's very sterile, but it's great in taking things apart. But when it takes things apart, it implies that there are separations inherent within these concepts. So as I explain this to you, I'm using English for practical purposes. Number one, because it's a great tool for global conversations. A lot of people around the world understand English. So practically speaking, if I want to speak to more people, it would be in English. We use what works, diba? To explain these very important concepts. Na hindi lang kami-kami yung nakakaintindi, but a lot of people have access to this information. Very important information. English is also useful because I'm able to actually, distinguish between these concepts, but we can't fall into the trap of thinking that just because we can explain these concepts means that we can take things apart. It's like taking apart a clock to understand the pieces of the clock. But if you look into the clock, take apart its pieces, try to label them and understand their processes, and you look for time in those separated pieces, then that would be a mistake because time is not in the clock. Does that make sense? So context is very important. And I wrote about this in an article that was published recently in Explore, the Journal of Science and Healing, and I called it the Sarili Mundo model. And the Sarili Mundo concept implies that the self, sarili, is part of kapwa. So imagine three circles. So there's sarili in the center, and then kapwa, and then mundo. Diba? So sarili is part of kapwa, or usness, which is part of mundo, world. And someone asked me, diba, why mundo, which is a Spanish term? Why not sansinukob, which is universe, right? But I use the term mundo because we use that term today. We always use that term, and I use it in the way that lovers would talk to each other and say, "You are my world, ikaw ang mundo ko." It would be kind of awkward to say, "Ikaw ang sansinukob ko," which can be poetic, but it's really strange. So in folk psychology, we use the terms that are commonly used by people. We don't try to take terms that are kind of distant. Sansinukob. Before this person asked me about the term sansinukob, I actually haven't looked into that term for a long time. So we use what's in front of us. And a lot of the concepts and terms and ideas and realities are actually right in front of us, and we just don't, we don't pay attention very much. We're not mindful of realities that are literally there. So this model of sarili mundo is not sarili to kapwa to mundo. It's not a linear path. It's an inclusive a path. It's a contextual thing. It's all part of an ecology of separate things working in harmony. You see? The dominant worldview, which is largely Western and remnants of the colonial worldview as well, it prioritizes domination and integration of individual parts. That's the point of colonization, where you integrate things under one thing. And it takes all these resources, hoards it, culture, you try to match it with the dominant culture. People are integrated and homogenized, and that's the problem of the dominant worldview. It makes things too simple, and it dilutes nuance. Now, we can recognize an alternative to it, which can be useful in our way of thinking, which is the contextual worldview, which prioritizes collaboration and harmony of individual parts. It recognizes that there are individual parts. It recognizes the complexity of nuance, but it focuses on temperance and sustainability as an antidote to hoarding and waste. And if we look at it in the specific context of nature, the more you hoard, the more you waste. And if we follow the dominant worldview, it's important to hoard things because things are limited, and so we have to compete. The more you hoard, the better you are, and somehow you're more rewarded in society the higher status you have. Diba? But if only a small group of people own most of the resources, they can't realistically consume it all, and it will be wasted. What could be incredibly nourishing for a lot of people, for majority of people who need it more, they just throw it away. So, going back to animism, animism acknowledges that we are all part of this living system. There is barely any distinction between living and non-living because everything has its own life or essence. And we treat life as kapwa, usness, this whole part of this whole thing, not just people, but also, if you like, encantos, right? Nature spirits, anitos, our ancestors who go back into nature. Also animals, plants, mountains, trees, rivers, forests. We honor life and participate in its mindful consumption. There's literally enough to go around if we are only able to participate in this ecological context. The resources can be replenished. It takes a while, but it does replenish. Diba? Who is it that said? I think it was the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu who said that nature doesn't hurry, but everything is accomplished. Diba? We can see this concept of cosmic processes in the local term gaba, which I grew up hearing. My mother is from the Visayas, and I would always hear this term. No, I was surprised that it apparently is not familiar to in other languages. I'm sure there's a term in other languages for the term gaba, but as I grew up, I was always told, hey, finish your food, be respectful to elders, don't blaspheme, and all that, and otherwise gagabaan ka. You will experience some kind of bad karma for it. And the concept of karma also, the way it's locally understood, not its original term, not its original understanding, but the local understanding of karma is that it implies this natural cosmic process. You do something and something comes back to you. Cause and effect, diba? Or equal and opposite reactions. But if you like to believe in gods and spirits, then you can recognize that careless treatment of nature and other people will be punished. And if you don't believe in the supernatural, then you can listen to the scientific. The earth has been here for billions of years, and it's remarkable how we can't actually wrap our head around the idea of billions of years. And humanity has only been here for only a few 100,000 years. And I know that's a long time, considering that the lifespan of a person is less than 100 years old. Some people reach 100, some even more, but that's really, really old. Diba? And that's why it's celebrated when a person reaches 100 years old. That is such a small thing compared to how long humans have been on Earth. Thousands of years. We are literally the 2020s, which is 2020 something, right? That's only counting backwards to Christ. That's only counting backwards 2020 years after Christ. Before Christ, thousands of years. Imagine that, but on a cosmic scale, and then billions of years more than that. And I was reading Carl Sagan, and he put it in the context of a cosmic calendar. And imagine that the whole of the universe, the whole age of the universe, can be summed up in a cosmic calendar. The exponential industrialization and the development of technology occurs in the last few minutes of the last day of the year before New Year, or the dawn of whatever you like to call it, the new age. So we're all here in the last few minutes, in the last few seconds. We are not destroying nature as if it will cease to exist. because of our own actions. But what we are doing is we are destroying ourselves by making nature uninhabitable for humans. The thing is that Earth will continue to live on as it has sustained itself for billions of years. Humans, not so much, probably. So, but happily today, as we start to recognize the actual impact of human beings to the climate, to the world that we live in, to the sustainability of animals, plants, and important resources, we're recognizing the impact of humanity and human behavior on pollution. We're recognizing its impact on ecologies that are being dismantled. But if we can slow down and find ourselves as part of this whole context of sarili mundo, we are literally within this mundo, then maybe we can do something about it. It starts with the mind, it starts with sarili, it starts with loob, pagbabagong loob, a change of the inner self. And when that happens, then maybe we can do something about it. Recovering the intuitive cultural wisdom that we have is a great first step. The worldview and the philosophy of indigenous knowledge is very important when we're trying to move forward in a world that is filled with amazing human innovations. And if we can do all that with the new comforts that we have, the technology that allows us to speak to people across distances, these are massive distances, by the way. And we're able to do that. We're able to speak to people. We're able to put people on literally on different celestial objects. It's amazing how we humans can innovate and create and make things out of the things that we have here. So then I believe that it's incredibly possible. It's actually truly possible that we can make things work for us and make things better for us today. It's possible. So living out these timeless values of indigenous knowledge will be up to you, and it will be up to a collective effort. It is a collective effort. It's not just you. All of us working together, pakikiisa, literally becoming one, participating in this oneness, is a very important thing if we want any kind of change to occur. And how do we do that? How do we face the anxiety of uncertainty? Well, we say bahala na, and in our saying bahala na, it's not that we're giving up; it's that we're finding the strength to carry on. Diba? So, a lot of things are possible, and if we see the amazing things that human beings have done, if we can only be more mindful about that. I'm not saying let go of technology. I'm not saying withdraw from the world. I'm saying participate in the world. Mindfully participate in the world and join the dance. And if we can do that, if we can recover and unearth this intuitive cultural wisdom, then there's a lot we can do, and we can apply that into our creativity, our human innovation. So yeah, a lot of things to think about, and I hope this doesn't overwhelm you, but I hope honestly, genuinely, that it excites you, because it excites me to see how human beings have gone so far in such a short span of time, and I'm hoping that we can sustain ourselves.